The stranger arrived in Silverton on a Tuesday, the kind of day when nothing remarkable was supposed to happen. Marcus Stone first noticed her at Ellen's diner, sitting alone in a booth, nursing a cup of coffee and studying a map spread out on the table. Even from across the room, something about her posture triggered his instincts. She was attractive in a subtle way. Mid to late 30s auburn hair, pulled back in a practical ponytail, lean build beneath simple clothing. But it wasn't her appearance that caught Marcus's attention. It was how she sat back to the wall. Clear view of both exits' eyes that scanned the room in a measured pattern that most people wouldn't notice, but Marcus recognized immediately. Military or intelligence, possibly both. They were habits from his own world, the kind that kept people alive in hostile territory. Instant combat readiness. They were hard to explain to civilians. They didn't understand how the wiring in your brain changed after you'd been hunted by other men, how you never really came all the way home. The thunderstorm that rolled in around midnight provided a fitting backdrop to Marcus's restless thoughts. As lightning illuminated his Spartan bedroom in strobe-like flashes, he found himself remembering Cunner Province 2010, the mission that had ended his career, the betrayal that had cost 4 good men their lives. Sleep, when it finally came, was thin and troubled, populated by ghosts who spoke in the voices of the dead. Over the next 3 days, Marcus observed her from a distance. She'd rented the Harrison cabin up near Turner's Creek, paid cash for a month in advance, according to Ellen's gossip network. She bought minimal groceries, hiked along the river each morning, and spent hours taking photographs of the landscape with a high-end camera. A tourist story that was almost perfect. Almost. On the 4th day, Marcus followed her. Not obviously, but using skills honed during years of reconnaissance missions. She moved through the wilderness with practiced efficiency, following game trails that most visitors would never notice. Her hiking boots were military issue, not recreational gear. When she stopped to examine the terrain, Marcus recognized the systematic approach of someone conducting surveillance rather than sightseeing. She was mapping the area, noting approaches, escape routes, defensive positions. Professional habits that confirmed his initial assessment. That evening at Ellen's, Marcus positioned himself where he could observe her interaction with locals. She asked casual questions about the area's history, local businesses, recent changes in the community. Information gathering disguised as friendly conversation. When Jimmy Watson mentioned the old mining operations upstream, her interest sharpened noticeably before she masked it with polite curiosity. Marcus had seen enough. Whatever brought this woman to Silverton, it wasn't vacation. Marcus was about to withdraw when she suddenly looked up straight toward his position. Impossible. He was fully concealed, motionless, but she moved with practiced efficiency, dousing the lights and disappearing from view. Marcus immediately shifted position, moving deeper into the trees, but he'd underestimated her. The whisper of movement behind him came just seconds before he felt the cold press of a gun barrel against his neck. Hand where I could see them. Her voice was steady, professional. Then we're going to walk very slowly back to my cabin and have a conversation, Mr. Stone. Or should I call you Lieutenant? Inside the cabin, she gestured for him to sit while keeping the Glock 19 with suppressor attachment trained on him. Definitely not a tourist. I'm Sarah Reynolds, she said, her accent revealing traces of the southeastern United States. Maybe Georgia. I'm told you're the expert on local fishing. Depends what you're fishing for, Marcus replied, studying her. Up close, he could see the faint tan lines of someone who spent significant time outdoors, and the calluses on her hands weren't those of an office worker. Just trout, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I'm renting a place up by the creek. Tourist, something like that. Taking some time off. Heard this was a quiet place. It is. Most folks come here because they're not looking for excitement. And you, Mr. Stone, what brought you to Silverton? The question was casual, but Marcus felt the weight behind it. Same as most quiet living. Sarah lowered the weapon slightly, but didn't holster it. Your file says Navy SEAL, call sign Ghost. Retired after Cunner Province incident. For men killed, 1 survivor. That would be you. Marcus's jaw tightened. You've done your homework. question is, who's paying for the research? Department of Energy, Nuclear Emergency Search Team. A SATM went missing from a decommissioned facility 3 weeks ago. Our intelligence suggests it's being moved through this area. SADM, Special Atomic Demolition Munition. Marcus had heard the term in classified briefings, portable nuclear devices designed for sabotage operations during the Cold War. Most have been destroyed decades ago. Most, but not all. And you think it's here? Sarah nodded grimly. Former CIA operative named Vincent Morrison has gone rogue. He's selling it to the highest bidder. Our sources indicate the handoff is happening somewhere along this river system within the next 72 hours. She studied his reaction carefully. I need local expertise, someone who knows every cave, every hidden spot along these waters. Marcus understood why she'd sought him out. Marcus made 2 encrypted calls that night. The first to Diego Martinez in Phoenix, the second to Tommy Walsh in Denver. Both men had served with him in Team 7 before Kunar Province changed everything. If this operation was going to work, he'd need their specific skill sets. Diego arrived first, driving a pickup truck loaded with carefully concealed equipment. The years had added some gray to his temples, but his eyes still held the sharp focus of a professional sniper. Behind him came Tommy, whose demolitions expertise had saved their unit more times than Marcus could count. Strange place for a reunion, Diego commented, surveying the river valley through binoculars. You always did pick interesting vacation spots, Ghost. Sarah briefed them on the threat, while Diego methodically assembled his rifle. An SR-25 with specialized barrel, modified for subsonic rounds. Quieter than a whisper when suppressed. He explained, noticing Sarah's interest in his equipment. You came prepared, she commented. Marcus said it was important. Diego looked around at the assembled intelligence. So we're hunting nukes and traitors, just like the good old days. For the next hour, the team briefed Diego on the situation while he methodically cleaned and assembled his rifle. Morrison, he finally said the name like acid on his tongue. I always wondered what happened to that snake. The approach to Morrison's compound was tense, but uneventful. Marcus and Tommy arrived precisely at 2 o'clock, presenting themselves at the security checkpoint with the casual confidence of civilians who suspected nothing. Marcus Stone and Tommy Walsh to see Mr. Coleman. Marcus told the guard, a burly man with the unmistakable bearing of ex-military. He's expecting us. They were escorted to the main trailer, their surroundings revealing much to their trained eyes. Marcus counted 22 men on site, noted the positions of security cameras and motion sensors, identified the communications hub in the smallest trailer. All valuable intelligence for tonight's operation. Morrison greeted them in what served as his office, a well-appointed space that seemed incongruous in the temporary structure. His silver hair was immaculately styled, his clothes expensively casual. Nothing about his appearance suggested the ruthless traitor who had sold out his country for profit. Mr. Stone, thank you for coming, Morrison said smoothly, his gaze sliding to Tommy. Your reputation for finding things that others can't precedes you. We discussed 3 potential locations where previous mining operations might have created suitable storage. Morrison had identified 3 potential locations where the SADM might be hidden. All within this 5-mile stretch, his team begins diving operations today. The current was stronger than expected, pulling at them as they swam deeper. Visibility was poor, perhaps 6 feet at most. Marcus led the way, following the contours of the riverbed toward the coordinates Sarah had identified. The underwater landscape was alien and disorienting rock formations looming suddenly out of the darkness like sentinels. After 5 minutes of steady swimming, Marcus spotted what they were looking for. A narrow crevice in the rock face, barely wide enough for a diver to pass through. He signaled to Sarah, then carefully maneuvered into the opening. The passage twisted sharply before opening into a larger underwater chamber. Marcus's light revealed a cavernous space with an air pocket at the top. They surfaced cautiously, finding themselves in a grotto about 15 feet across with a small rocky shelf above the waterline. We can talk here, Marcus said softly, removing his mouthpiece. Sound won't carry outside the cave. Sarah examined the chamber walls with her dive light, noting artificial modifications to the natural cave structure. This has been prepared, she confirmed. Recent excavation work reinforced storage compartments. Marcus's light caught metallic gleam in the far wall. There, Diego's voice crackled through their underwater communicators. Enemy team approaching your position. ETA 3 minutes. Marcus and Sarah exchanged alarm glances. Acknowledged. Marcus responded, proceeding with extraction. Negative, Diego interrupted. No time. 2 boats, 8 men heavily armed. You need to disappear now. Marcus made a split-second decision. We'll have to leave it secured here and come back when it's clear. He carefully returned the SADM to its compartment and closed the hidden door, ensuring it looked undisturbed. Let's move. They quickly donned their rebreathers and slipped back into the water. Marcus led them through a different passage he'd spotted, narrower and more difficult to navigate, but it emerged farther downstream away from their entry point. As they exited the cave system, the sound of boat motors became audible through the water. Marcus signaled Sarah to stay close to the riverbed, using the natural contours for concealment. They swam cautiously, conserving air, moving with the current to put distance between themselves and their pursuers. After 20 minutes of careful navigation, they surfaced near a fallen tree that provided cover from visual observation. The nuclear device remained hidden, but Morrison's forces were closing in. The mining shed appeared ahead, a weathered wooden structure built into the hillside, offering both concealment and defensive positions. Tommy had chosen well. Ghost to demolition, Marcus transmitted on their secure channel. Approaching your position from the east. 3 friendlies. Copy that, Tommy responded. Perimeter secure. Welcome to the party. Inside the abandoned mining shed, Tommy had transformed the space into a defensible position. The SADM sat in its protective case on a workbench surrounded by improvised early warning devices and booby traps. Extraction team, Marcus asked, examining Tommy's handiwork with approval. 8 hours out, Sarah replied, helping Marcus ease onto a wooden crate. She examined his wounds, a deep gash along his ribs. Various contusions, but nothing immediately life-threatening. We can't wait 8 hours. Diego's voice came through the radio. Morrison's forces are sweeping the area systematically. They'll find his position within 2. Marcus studied the tactical situation. They had the device, but they were outnumbered, partially wounded, and surrounded. Morrison's mercenaries were professional, well-equipped, and highly motivated by the promise of a substantial payday. The team needed to create chaos, divide their attention, and exploit the terrain advantages they understood better than their pursuers. Stop there, Lieutenant, Morrison ordered when Marcus was halfway across the clearing. So Sarah's the case now. Sarah slowly placed the case on the ground. Your turn. Morrison nodded, and Marcus was allowed to continue forward. As he passed Sarah, their shoulders nearly touching, he murmured a single word. When? She understood immediately. Marcus had a plan. One of Morrison's men approached to retrieve the case weapon trained on Sarah. The moment he bent to lift it, Marcus spun with unexpected speed for a man who appeared injured, tackling Sarah to the ground as gunfire erupted from the trees. But the shots weren't aimed at them. Diego had opened fire from his hidden position, the precision shots striking key targets. The SUV's engine block, the radio operator, the fuel tank of one of the vehicles. Simultaneously, an explosion rocked the far side of the perimeter. Tommy's handiwork, creating confusion and dividing Morrison's forces. Marcus pulled Sarah behind the nearest cover as chaos erupted around them. Morrison's voice cut through the gunfire, cold and professional. You always were too clever for your own good, Stone. But you can't win this. You're outnumbered and outgunned. Morrison had underestimated the team's coordination and battlefield experience. Morrison's laugh was hollow. We both know that's not going to happen. In a swift motion, he shoved his human shield toward Marcus and turned to dive into the river, his last possible escape route. Marcus hesitated for a split second, catching the wounded man rather than firing at Morrison's retreating form. But Morrison never reached the water. A single shot rang out distinctive, even amid the chaos, the unmistakable report of a high-powered sniper rifle. Morrison's body jerked violently, then collapsed at the river's edge. Marcus looked toward the source of the shot, not the eastern ridge where Diego was positioned, but the river itself. There partially emerged from the dark water. A figure rose slowly into view. Sarah in her tactical wetsuit, water streaming from her auburn hair, the specialized underwater sniper rifle in her hands, still trained on Morrison's motionless form. The sight was surreal, a warrior emerging from the depths like some avenging spirit of the river itself. The remaining mercenaries, seeing their leader dead and their escape routes compromised, quickly surrendered. "That shot," Marcus said quietly as they walked back toward town. "From the river. You planned that all along, didn't you?" Sarah's eyes met his with a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "You weren't the only one with a call sign Ghost. They called me Nymph in field operations. The water was always my element." "David will be proud," Marcus said softly. "He will be proud of all of us." 3 weeks later, Marcus Stone stood on his rebuilt dock, casting his line into the Snake River. As the morning sun painted the canyon walls in shades of amber and gold, the town of Silverton had returned to its peaceful routine. The events of that fateful night already fading into whispered legends and speculation. The official story, a drug cartel's failed attempt to establish a smuggling route thwarted by local law enforcement with federal assistance, had been accepted without much question. In small towns, some truths were better left unexamined. "We should get breakfast at Ellen's," Marcus suggested. "Best pancakes in 3 counties." Sarah's smile brightened. "Lead the way." As they walked along the riverbank toward town, Marcus felt a lightness he hadn't experienced in years. The weight of the past, Kiener Province, the lost teammates, the decades of solitary vigilance seemed less crushing somehow. At Ellen's diner, the morning crowd of locals nodded acknowledgments, making space at the counter without fanfare. This was Silverton, unassuming, steady, resilient. It had absorbed the shock of recent events and returned to its natural rhythm like the river that gave it life.